Welcome, Reanimated fans. This is H.A. Conrad coming to you from Brooklyn. Joining me, as always, my intrepid hostess with the mostest, Stuart Tiffin from the West Coast. How are you, sir?
Good day, H.A. I'm well. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous. I don't think I've had enough coffee, but I will be working on that.
There's never enough coffee.
I know. Have a few things to chat about today. Just a couple new trailers out before we get into our discussion about the next couple of Walking Dead episodes, Out of the Ashes and On the Inside. But you know, we got a couple of trailers to chat about. One which is the continuing saga of Resident Evil. So
we haven't even seen like the last two Mia Jovovich ones.
I know. And so, but this looks pretty good. I mean, it's Resident Evil. It's what it is. It's exactly what you would expect. And this is Resident Evil Raccoon City. And so, at some point we will catch up on those, but we still have a lot of Walking Dead to get through in the meantime, right?
We have tons on our plate.
We have so much to get on. And I'll admit to you, these are like not my top priority in terms of things that I'm looking to review, but
you've never been a huge fan of this entire franchise.
No, I love Mia Jovovich. I love her. I think she's amazing. This franchise is not my fave. So
the cast looks interesting. I mean, some of them I don't recognize. Some of them are very recognizable. What's his name? Donald Logue has apparently a role in this.
So much.
Neil McDonough, who is that extremely blonde, blue-eyed guy who's been in a lot of stuff and has been amazing in a lot of stuff. But then the leads I don't really recognize.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Again, I'm totally down with dealing with it. It's not my, and in terms of the echelon of things that I want to watch, it's there, but like a little lower down on my list, I admit.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then you found this Taiwanese zombie film, which looks really freaky, deaky,
disturbing. Yeah.
I don't know. This one is lower on my list for other reasons.
This one's gonna be a tough one. And even in like the Fangoria article, which I found that put me onto this, they were like, I can't really describe what they do in this movie because it's too hardcore.
I mean, that's
in Fangoria.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And I will say the trailer is freaky enough. I was like, oh, this is going to be a really hard one to watch. So we shall see. But anyway, and in terms of news in the world, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff coming out. So I think we'll definitely have our hands full. I think through the new year is sort of how I'm blocking it out. There's lots of cool stuff coming out.
I mean, we have like 3 simultaneous Walking Dead shows on the air right now.
Right.
I feel like World Beyond, Fear the Walking Dead, and Walking Dead are all putting out episodes at the moment. I think, unless I'm off by a week, but it's just a lot.
Yeah, definitely a lot. But I welcome it. It will keep us busy, so that's all good. But I think we're ready to jump into our review. Which the first one is Out of the Ashes, and this is episode 5, and this is Greg Nicotero.
Both of these are actually.
Yeah, and I can't say that I'm totally shocked. They are, especially On the Inside, which is episode 6. I mean, clearly,
exactly. That was my thinking. That is 100% a horror aficionados episode, and I have no doubt Greg Nicotero had a great time with that one. But Out of the Ashes, is a mess of an episode, in my opinion.
I have to admit, with both of these, well, we'll get into it. I wasn't as psyched about them as I have been about others, for a variety of reasons. But we'll chat about that as we pick apart these 2 episodes. But there were definitely like some good and bright moments, which I loved. Once again, I think Out of the Ashes, Princess is still my best, like my favorite. I want to see more of her, and I enjoy every time she has any kind of time. And she does a lot with the time she has. So she's just like such a fantastic character. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think she is the light on this show.
and I should say, she is an amazing actor. So that's the other piece of it. Like I don't know that she pulls this off in a way that I think only she can. So she does such her delivery is just phenomenal. So,
On the
but
flip side of Princess's light, this episode dips its toe into Aaron's inner darkness,
right,
which is a bit of a tired trope for this show,
it
where
is.
members of the cast all have to take their turns going evil, or at least a little too vengeful. Like we've had everybody's done it. And then they even kind of like called back to that when Carol in this episode is talking to Aaron about like, don't do that, be a good guy. She's like, I went to the dark side and it wasn't great. It's
I
just
know.
like, yeah, okay, yeah, we've seen this happen 100 times on the show, but this time it was Aaron's turn.
It's his turn. I don't know that they had enough crazy beard and crazy eyes going on for him in this one, that they did try to mess up his face a little bit. So,
I mean,
not
Ross
quite.
Marquand is not phoning it in. He is really giving it all.
No,
all
he is totally giving it all he's got. He's got the. I just felt like his beard need to have like something crazier going on with his hair or something, but he looks nuts. It's okay. I guess he's got the arm to balance it out.
yeah.
But I also think that this there is the sort of continuing saga of what is going on in Alexandria, which is that things are feeling unsafe. I think that's part of it. This whole community has been through a pretty big trauma, and they're freaking out because they don't have enough food and it's feeling pretty desperate. And all the people that they've sent out to help, nobody's come back. We know that Maggie and Negan are kind of stuck in a house. You don't owe me that bottle of wine yet. I was kind of bummed out about that.
Oh, I don't know. There was a moment
There
in
was a
this,
moment. So,
just before Gabriel and Elijah suddenly come from nowhere. I was like, oh, is it? Are we there? But no.
but they are doing, I mean, even if they don't do it, they are shipping pretty hardcore right now, at least from a Walking Dead point of view.
Yeah.
So, so we'll see what happens. But we do have these moments where these different groups are dealing with trauma in different ways. But back to the Aaron's issue, he's having like terrible nightmares.
That is a really bad nightmare. Like
Basically
having to
about
face all of the evil people that he's had to come in contact with during his run on the show in one nightmare. That's too much.
right. And then they go and they're he and a group of people, and I was really psyched because we got Jerry back in the mix. But we have Aaron, Jerry, Lydia, and Carol going to Hilltop to basically look for more supplies, but specifically like blacksmith supplies because the wall is coming down in Alexandria, and they just need to like forage a little bit.
The wall does come down. I
It
mean,
does.
and it's also an interesting peek into what living in Alexandria is like right now, which is kind of miserable.
Yep.
Everybody's sleeping on the floor in Jerry's house.
Yep.
Or a lot of people are anyway. And they also have another scene later on in this episode where a bunch of kids are moving into Judith's house. And
Yep.
now there's probably like 10 kids in that house.
Yeah.
I don't know that we saw how many houses were destroyed for whatever reason in Alexandria, but it seems like they're down to just a couple, but they have a lot of people.
I think that the point is that the houses that they're in are secure or have an ability to be secure. So, when there's walkers that have come through, Aaron tells Grace to go and like lock herself in the basement. And so I think it's also partially to do with that, is that maybe with the number of people, these are the only houses that they can secure and keep watch and that kind of thing. And they're really limited, and that feeling of threat is always there, even more so than it has been. And so put starving on top of that, and it's not it's really a miserable existence at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak, but Aaron's not willing to leave, which was an interesting exchange also. And the fact that the wall managed to fall down and a bunch of zombies came in, and at least one Alexandrian was killed by a zombie, which again, at like 8-9 years or whatever it is into the apocalypse, I'm like, come on. Yeah. How is anybody still getting eaten by zombies? I mean,
right.
we can talk about the Commonwealth and that all the problems with that sort of community too, but an Alexandrian getting eaten by zombies, I feel like, is a little silly at this point.
Right.
Just like Agatha.
It seems so ridiculous at this point. They're not quiet I guess they use this whenever they want to, and they kind of switch that in and out. But yeah, I agree with you. I just don't think that would happen. But I guess they have to show that the threat is real. I did enjoy how they dealt with the threat and how everybody's like, hey, we gotta get the wall up, and that was kind of a cool little scene in
Yeah.
choreography.
Yeah, the response is like super polished, and they get the wall up and they kill the zombies who need to be killed, and they're throwing tools to each other and not dropping them. So I'm when you see that, the contrast of a dead guy lying there who you didn't see him die, but he's just like clearly he was probably awake and on guard duty. But also that giant piece of metal falling out of the wall wouldn't have woken everybody up in this
Yeah, because it's
community.
pretty heavy. I mean, it's not light, and but anyway, I'd like to see the response in that teamwork, and that's something we don't often see. Which
Yeah,
like just sort of like the daily, hey, this is what we got to do to survive,
especially
and I
among all the red shirts.
right.
Like yeah, our heroes are mixed in there too, but it's a lot of red shirts doing capable things.
Right, but I like it. You and I like that minutia in a way that I think certain zombie fans of the genre enjoy more so than others.
Totally.
But they go to Hilltop to forage, and I do think that there is, given especially what we've seen Aaron going through, he is basically at a boiling point. He is really just raw. He is ready to snap. So I think regardless of whatever happens at Hilltop, this sort of explosion, what's going on in his head, this crisis was going to happen regardless.
I don't know.
Um,
Part of it is what happens right at when they get there, which is that they find a bunch of their former
yeah.
dead buddies
Well,
walking
no, that's what I'm
around.
saying. Like I think that even if they hadn't run into anybody else like a big bad, this would have been traumatic, and they
Yeah,
would be dealing with this anyway because they are. I
yeah.
mean, you're seeing fallen people that you loved and that you worked with, that you helped defend the community, and they fell when the communities fell, and so that was like definitely like absolutely traumatic for all of them, but especially for him. And that only got worse as the episode went on because, of course, they run into a whisperer, a rando whisperer. So,
Called Keith.
yes, and it is kind of. I did like the sort of detail where they personalize how this attack was. I mean, you have Jerry saying, "No, this is," when they finally sort of see the whisperer, like they, he's seeing like his wife's like scarf. Like they know that these people had a direct. Obviously, they were part of this entire battle, but just even the detail where they see how the walkers are being herded, and that this is just a callback to the whispers, and Lydia recognizes it. It's just like an interesting little detail
Yeah,
that.
I was kind of glad to have that element left in the show because, like we were just talking about this last week, we've never really had an idea of how many whisperers there were,
Mm-hmm,
and yeah, this is a skill set that these people have, and they're gonna keep herding walkers.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean they're gonna wield them like weapons, but they're, you know, if you had to, you might consider them like joining Alexandria and being like, all right, herd the walkers away then, and that's your new job. Like if you want to be useful and join a community, you could do that.
Well, right. I mean, and I guess the question is, and this is addressed to some extent in this, it's like, well, who are the whisperers that were following this? Are they sheep? Are they as dangerous if they're not being led by some crazy like leaders? By alpha, by beta, like are that these are all the questions, and what level of threat are they now? If they're one like this guy and with a bunch of kids, like does that really pose a threat? And we Aaron
Wait,
really
who has a
just
bunch of kids?
what?
Who has a bunch of
Not
kids?
kids, but like a bunch of like weird little whisperer survivors.
Yeah,
Like they seem pretty young to me, or sort of a
they were
mix.
they were a bunch
And
of. I mean, one of them was like young-ish, but they
yeah,
were just yeah, they were like a motley group
they're a
of five other
motley, they're a little
people.
motley group, but like I don't know, like they're very scared, and that's generally the tendency of whisperers, other than alpha and beta, is that the whisperers tend to be freaked out and shell shocked. They don't tend to be aggressive for the most part, other than when they're being directed to be so. Um, so that was kind of interesting. And there's also the tension with Lydia, who is, because basically Aaron is saying like some pretty bad things about the Whispers, which obviously they are not this was like a bad time for Alexandria and Hilltop. It destroyed their communities, and so there's still tension there because Lydia used to be one. And there's also that interesting moment where Keith the Whisperer is trying to sort of get her alliance or help because he's like, "Oh, I used to bring food when you weren't," and she's like, "I don't know, you're all wearing the masks. You
Yeah.
all look the same to me."
Y'all look the same to me. But she does immediately say, I know this guy
Yeah.
also when she sees him. But she can't corroborate his like, I'm a good guy story.
Right. Right.
And Aaron's going off and being like, every whisperer is a bad person, and the straight shot of Lydia's face, and I'm like, I thought she was going to say, but what about me?
Yeah, I know that's
And instead she goes, what about Mary? Which is a strong point to make because Aaron and Mary did have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary was a stand-up kid or woman, and she actually died for their cause.
Yeah.
But Aaron, I think, is a little too far gone to really, register that sort of argument. It takes Carol talking him down and killing his pet zombie, which I was like, yeah, I did feel like that was going over an edge. And then the fact that Jerry was helping him seemed a little far-fetched.
It did seem far-fetched because this is definitely not, I mean, they kind of tie it in with Jerry going like, yeah, like this was our community and they just, but I still don't believe it of Jerry. So that was sort of a tough leap to make for that character, especially since he's been kind of MIA for a bit.
Yeah.
Maybe if they had shown some kind of reason or some sort of evolution where he is there, maybe, but I didn't feel like that rang true, at least for his character. The one part that I did think was like crazy and over the edge, and this was probably deliberate, is that he allows the walker to bite Keith's hand, and his whole solution is like, I'm gonna cut your hand off, it's all right, look,
yeah,
I've got a mace hand. Like, I don't know, it just, that seemed just like, I think, when Carol's like, oh, you're gonna do something you regret, I'm like, hasn't he already just done something that he really regrets?
This, like, yeah, you got some sterile bandages around here somewhere, I'm sure, in this pile of fire charred lumber.
We can cut the hand off with this knife that obviously does not have enough heft to do that in a fast enough way, and like maybe we can tourniquet you and cauterize. How are we going to do this? Like, this doesn't seem like this makes so much sense.
Nope.
But anyway, like that whole scene didn't feel. I mean, I thought Aaron portrayed it, like he definitely portrayed that craziness well, but even Carol talking him down, it's like, well, even it's almost like you could see in his face, he's like, well, that's rich, because Carol like has done some insane things, like really insane things, and
where the stakes were much higher.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I'm glad of this. This storyline is probably the one that I enjoyed the most, I would say, for this episode. But it's also one of like 18 storylines.
Right, there's a lot to pack in.
This episode gave me major whiplash, but I was happy for this one also because it lets you know that Connie's alive, and that's like the reward for leaving the Whisperer alive is that they have intel on Connie, and the fact that these guys take a wagon of it looks like they've got a plow, a bunch of other stuff, and a wagon, and they ride all that back to Alexandria at the end of this story thread. But they are like, we were also with Maggie and Negan. We're also in the Commonwealth. And is there one other storyline that's happening in this episode too? I feel like there were 4 at least.
I think we've got we've got Alexandria with Judith and the kids. So there's that whole dynamic, and then we've got
Judith and the kids. Yeah, okay, so let's talk to the Judith and the kids story thread. If you're good with that, because this was a frustrating one. Judith is training training the other kids in swordsmanship with those wooden swords, and I thought that was cute. And then she hears some morons actually playing with a zombie kid and like putting their hand close to its mouth.
Yep.
Like, where are the grown-ups in this scene?
I don't know. It's really not only that, but again, I don't. Maybe if things are kind of crazy, I could see maybe something like this happening, but I don't believe it in the way that the kids are trained here, in the way that the parents act towards him. I mean, I guess when kids are unsupervised, they'll do stupid things, and maybe that's kind of where they were going with it, or people do stupid things, like especially like kids dare each other or whatever. But to me, the sort of normal behavior between kids. I don't know. Like, I don't know that this, again, it didn't feel like it really rang true, because I feel like any adult would have been over there in a hot second. I
And it
don't,
was clearly loud enough that Judith noticed it from a long distance away, right?
right. Like, it just didn't feel like this would go unnoticed in the community. And I just don't feel like behavior like this would ever be tolerated. And it just, I mean, we've seen this before, when, the whatever that little gang of kids were that had the taunting the zombie in the pit, et cetera, et cetera.
Those were Hilltoppers. Yeah, I think they're all
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we've seen it, I guess. So maybe this is just something, if it's, I don't know, like, if it's a normal part of your life, you don't view it as dangerous. But I just don't feel like the adults would have tolerated it, especially now when everything's like so risky. It just didn't, it felt strange that the kids were sort of doing this stuff alone and nobody was intervening.
I
So,
think that kid, there's a zombie kid too that they're
yeah.
taunting.
Yeah.
I think that's Jeffrey Dean Morgan's son.
Oh, really? I didn't see that, but that's pretty
There
awesome.
was some behind the scenes stuff that I was seeing before I watched this episode. I didn't watch the postscript with Angela Kang, but I think that's his son. Yeah. So it's a bit, yeah, we're seeing a few like repetitive things, I guess, in this episode between, one more character falls into the dark heap for a while and then is brought back or not. And then these kids taunting zombies is silly. The thing I am glad for in this thread is the boy says, "You're super annoying, Judith. No wonder your mom abandoned you." And that like leads her
Yeah.
down, obviously. And she starts, well, first she draws a sword on him and almost kills him again. Where are the grown-ups? And then she like goes off and is extremely depressed. And has to have a real heart-to-heart with Rosita, which I don't know that those two people have ever had a scene together. So I was glad to see it.
No, and it was a good scene. I liked it. I thought the dialogue and the interaction with them was good. And
The
very
girl playing
much,
Judith is she's a good performer.
she's a really
Like,
good performer. But I also, as we've, other than these weird moments with the groups of kids, which we were really happy to talk about how it was sort of more normal between Judith and um, the other and Grace, and like,
Herschel and RJ.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just felt like they kind of went off the rails in the kid behavior here. But I did love her interactions with Rosita, and basically the realities of what this world was, and what it is now, and how Judith is sort of getting through that, and normal things for a kid to be upset about, because the other kids destroyed the little the handprint art piece that she had for her and Carl. And again, that is one of the few things she's got of her family, and a sort of a reminder. And I just liked the interaction between her and Rosita. I thought it was really good. As was the sentiment, which is basically like, look, this is all these people, yeah, this is a thing and this is important, but and I know why you feel that way, but they gave you the skills to survive, and that's how, like, you basically remember them. And and then at the end, Rosita's like, but I'm really good at fixing things. And so she was like taking care of it all in a good way, and I just thought she framed it. I thought the dialogue was really well written in this particular case.
They've really made some effort, I think, to soften Rosita in this season,
Yeah.
and Magna. Not that she gets a lot of lines in this episode, but in the last few, or in scenes previously in this season, Magna, who used to be super mad all the time too, if you recall,
Yep.
like Rosita, but is now just like really supportive of her friend Kelly. And so it's kind of interesting that they're changing up these two women, but I'm glad for it, because constantly mad characters are not that much fun
Yeah, and
to
they're
hang
not
out.
really just layered enough that you can deal with them all the time. I mean, maybe they add some conflict into scenes and things like that, but I do think you have to have them a little bit more like, well rounded. So I thought that was really kind of nice to see.
Yeah.
And we've seen a little bit more of this with Rosita in general, just after she had the baby and all the things that she's gone through. So that makes sense to me. So I thought that they did a good job at showing that. But in any case, I think we need to talk about the Commonwealth, which is, I did think that they did a nice job of editing here, just the complete contrast between the world that the Alexandrians are living in and the Commonwealth. It's like it feels almost fake. And I think that they did such a great job with the welcome to the Commonwealth little infomercial. Basically, I mean,
Mhm.
it reads really well, although doesn't it read like something from like, I don't know, like the 80s or 90s or
Yeah, that's the idea, I think, is that it's supposed to feel, and they even do a callback to the cheesy video later on in the episode. It is supposed to be a cheesy video, like the transitions that they're using and the effects and the sound kind of has artifacts in it that makes you real, think that, yeah, it's they're trying to be a little bit Dharma initiative with it almost,
They are,
uh,
but I think that the reason why it like struck me as being weird is that, I don't know. I feel like there was still better technology or better editing or better I don't know. I just feel like it wouldn't have looked quite like this. So unless that's certain, but maybe these are the tools of the trade. Maybe that's what they're going for here.
so
Um, but
my issue with the Commonwealth is, in addition to this video being part of this overall vibe, is it just feels completely unrealistic.
correct, correct. And we've seen enough of this world to have, I think, raised a very skeptical eyebrow to the idea that even a place like this could even exist.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's too clean, and it's only underscored. It almost feels like a dream
right.
in these scenes, because our characters are still dressed in their post-apocalyptic steampunk outfits,
Yep.
and then they're like rubbing elbows with people wearing plaid and pastel, and it feels like Woodbury again. So back to this repetitive sort of story, or at least visual beat here. I find it really disconcerting.
I found it disconcerting for the reasons that you mentioned, but also all I can think about is how could you sustain something like this? Where are you getting those pastel clothes? Like this is, and at least with Woodbury, as unrealistic as it was, it seemed at least attainable because it was kind of like smaller. They were only dealing with this like little area.
They were
This
probably
feet
only about 6 to 9 months after the start of the
Right, and
apocalypse,
this is
and these,
very very much
yeah.
longer. And you've got like a lot of people, you've got a lot of things to defend. um and also just to keep things going, like, and I think, I mean, obviously it's kind of deliberate, that these people are living in clearly a bubble, but like, would you really have an ice cream truck, like how are you having enough supplies
And a
and
bakery, like luxury goods. Yeah, that
luxury goods and
is.
things that are going bad, and like, and her, like, and we're going to talk about the reunion between Yumiko and her brother, but like her brother's a surgeon. Like, I
But he doesn't
just,
want anybody to know. At least that is at least a mystery, and makes you think there's more layers to this place.
maybe,
He
but
wants to
like,
be a baker instead, right?
right, but like, I mean, in the way that they sort of vet everybody, you would imagine that they would have figured that out. And I just, maybe you're right, maybe they're going to reveal more later, but this, even just the idea of having like a bakery with this, and that's the point. I mean, they're showing all these baked goods that might actually go bad, whereas our people in Alexandria are starving to death. But you have to think about all the things that you would need to supply in order for a place like this and for just a bakery to exist, let alone all these other things. And you have people actually using money, which to me doesn't make total sense, but, or some kind of money, currency. And I don't know, it feels like a dream world, and that's kind of what, and that's the other thing, like, you would imagine that if these people were indoctrinated into the Commonwealth, they would have given them new clothing, because they want everybody to feel a different way. And it's very jarring to see our group of people from Alexandria wandering around in their, as you said, their little steampunk outfits, right? um there's also a lot of propaganda. I mean, it feels like a playset, basically. I mean, there's like all the signage, and they have the callback to the video. There's lots of, I don't know if you saw, like, a lot of the posters even featured that the enforcer guy, what's his name, the one that Princess,
Mercer.
yeah.
Mercer. Yeah.
And and he's a very visible presence. So it's also like you have a place that is organized enough to be able to have, like, to print propaganda like this and put it up and messaging
Yeah.
and things like that.
They've
So,
gone from 0 to 100 for between the other communities that we're seeing, and Maggie's whole
right.
like repeated stories about how terrible everything is outside the walls. But how hasn't she come into I mean, I guess they've
Right.
gone through a couple of states to get here. Aren't they in like West Virginia
Yeah.
now, or
But it's
South
not like
even?
that far, like,
Yeah.
and it's big enough, and like, working like a machine enough that I just don't think that they would not have known about it or not come into contact with it, especially because like you're talking about such a community where they would have to cultivate so much food to keep this
So much. Like I need to see some fields. I need
right.
to see some farms here
Yeah,
because
like
they have a density of population, and the amount of these like very spoilable luxury good like ice cream and pies and cakes. Come on.
well, just do you even think about like what the process would be to make flour, right? Like flour and sugar and
Well,
like
the Alexandria was making flour. They were remember they were making bread every day. That was how Aaron persuaded Mary to come over. Sort of was just fresh bread every day
yeah,
out of his backpack.
they're making bread, but on this scale, and I
Yeah,
don't know, it just doesn't feel again. So I also want to see those fields. I want to see the mills. I want to see whatever they're doing,
yeah.
and water supply.
Because
Uh,
this set is not getting this across. It feels just like a TV set where
it feels, you know what
like a
it
hundred
feels
we've
like.
seen before. What does it feel like?
As I was watching the video, but also like the you know the propaganda video, but also when they're walking around, it feels very much like Disney. That's like the vibe it has.
Yeah,
Like
if to me it's like this is the town that Wanda was setting up in WandaVision. It's just like
yeah, no,
this is that
totally.
downtown.
It feels like a construct. So, and we've got them wandering around like weird players in this game. And as I said, my absolute, you know, they're, and it's interesting because you've got Yumiko going to meet her brother. Um, and that is a pretty, that's a, like a kind of a fun scene. He does exactly what you would expect him to do, drop this cake, but also it feels like, what a waste. But,
Right? Yes.
but
This dude who's playing Tommy, his name is Ian Anthony Dale. He's an American actor, and he's not nailing that accent.
no, he is not. It's a
He's
pretty rough
supposed to be
accent.
Yumiko's. Is Yumiko supposed to be British or Australian? I have a hard time with their
I think
accent.
she's supposed to be British.
Well, he's not doing either.
Nope,
He's
I don't
doing
know what he's
some.
doing. It was really jarring. I was just like, I don't believe that these two are siblings. but, um, but they have this interaction, and it's just like, you know, they're all living in this bubble, and then our Alexandrians are really just, you know, they're desperate. They left their friends struggling, and they're seeing all of this, and it's got to be like kind of messed up for them. And also with this community, there's a bunch of bureaucracy. There's a lot of rule following, which basically it's not bendable. But yet Eugene has managed to convince his, you know,
I don't
his
trust her,
yeah,
Stephanie.
like why, like, and but he has a lot of trust in her, and enough that like you saw what the process was to get in here. Do you really trust this person that much? And now she, you know, she definitely knows that you have a community of people to help, and not just that, but yeah, like you um we've got Yumiko talking to her brother and revealing things to him. We've got, you know,
Yeah,
like
what how I thought that the whole way that they got into this community was lying about the existence of Alexandria.
right. And
It,
now suddenly they're revealing it to people, and people
yeah.
that they don't really know at least where they stand, and they see enough of the weirdness in this community. Like at least Yumiko is able to, if she's asking her brother, is this stuff real, or what's the dark underbelly, because we've seen it before. And I don't blame her for asking the question, but I do think that it would be weird, no matter how much trust you might have, especially if you see what they've been living through versus what you've been living through.
And she hasn't seen her brother in 8 years, question
Right.
mark. I don't know how long it's actually been, but it's around that
It's a
number.
long time.
And some of their conversation, some of the dialogue for this conversation, it feels unrealistic, where
Yeah.
he's just like, oh, Miko, when's the last time you actually saw me being truly happy? And I'm like, this is not a question for the first conversation
Nope.
you've had with your sibling after a zombocalypse and 8 years have passed.
Nope.
I'm sorry, you don't have those sorts of exchanges.
Right.
That's more like we're at Thanksgiving and everything is completely normal, you
Right.
know?
And that's the other thing, is that he, like, even his story feels very thin, in
Yeah.
terms of
And
what
I don't know if that is like on purpose because this community is going to be like like behind the curtain it's something else, or if they're just writing this badly. I can't tell
well, I
what's
mean,
what.
even his comment that he fell in with some good people, we know how very rare that is.
Right.
And the fact that it would end up into this thing, that's why she is disbelieving. And I think with, you know, I think maybe there is like a possibly a rule in the community that they're only allowed to like they cover up, they like kind of smooth over some details, or they don't discuss things. That may be one of the rules. So I'm hoping I'm hoping it's not bad writing. I'm hoping that this is sort of like a directive that they're supposed to follow. But this whole conversation feels weird and strange. And they're doing it over like a coffee table. Like, I feel like even these little moments would be extraordinarily stressful and weird for our Alexandrians.
Yeah.
So, and the one, and as I was saying, like, and Eugene is always already trying to like get Stephanie to help him out in a way that's like kind of illegal there, and she's like, yeah, I'll help you. It all feels very strange, and I don't think that they would give in this quickly. I think they would keep it between them as survivors, and I certainly don't think they would be revealing as much information as they are to the people in the Commonwealth, given what they had to do to get through, and given what they saw the process was. It just feels strange.
So I think we are definitely very skeptical about the Commonwealth.
The couple of bright spots, though, with this whole thing is that you do have the jarring piece where the Alexandrians are kind of trying to deal with this world and wrap their minds around it. You've got the whole thing with Eugene at the ice cream truck. Though, okay, we know that there's a President Milton somewhere in here. We see this woman.
Do you remember Milton from Woodbury too? Is that on purpose?
I
Are they
think
purposefully
so.
making me think that like Woodbury, Milton, pastel shirts? I feel like they're doing this on purpose.
I do
Unless
too.
Milton was from the comics.
Yeah, I do too. So I like, we'll have to see what happens there. But the fact that the woman getting the ice cream order like doesn't even talk to Eugene is very weird.
Yeah.
Like, he asks a question, she just smiles at him weirdly and runs off with perfectly formed ice cream cones. And by the way, have you ever seen ice cream cones look like that? Especially like if like they're just on a weird like they look perfect. Anyway, we've got that going on, but the best part of this whole episode, in my opinion, is the interaction between Princess and Mercer.
Well, I would have thought it would be there's a couple of little scenes between Maggie and Negan and this is the one it's in this episode where they have their moment of will they won't they.
Oh yeah, no, okay, so
yes,
that
I agree with you though, that the princess making like, but she's not actually like actually flirting with Mercer.
No, but it's like her version of flirting, which is why it's so hilarious. And he just doesn't know what to do with her. And she's trying, like, this is a person who's been alone for a really long time. Like, and I think she probably weirdly wouldn't know. I think she pre-apocalypse, I don't think she would have known what to do anyway. But this is like her bizarro way of interacting with people. And I do think it's a very good way to do it because he just has no idea what to think about it.
Yeah, it is. He does a nice job of sort of hearing what she's saying and trying not to react to it as
right.
if he can help it.
So it's a pretty great scene between these two characters. But yes, the Negan and Maggie scene, that was definitely, and I just thought the interaction between them was good. But the lighting, I don't know if you noticed, it was like very, very clearly like, yeah, I don't know, very romantic.
It was like the golden hour, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we follow their progress from the woods where they're still having the same argument, and she's still saying to him, I think about killing you all the time, which she's already said that a couple times this season. And so I don't feel like we need to hear that anymore between them.
We don't, but even when, there's the moment when like it's very much foreplay. I mean, that's what it is. And she like takes out the walker, and you can even see it on his face. Like, it's just this really great moment and well done between these two actors.
Negan has always been turned on by women who threaten his life.
Yes, he loves it. So there's that. But you do actually have them talking to each other versus yelling at each other, which I think is at least some progress. And so they are definitely, like at least interacting in a slightly different way than we've seen them. So
I don't know, like he's still like, I want to leave, and she is saying, I want to stay. And he comes up with a compromise, and they're actually fighting over him trying to leave after it becomes sunset, I think.
Right.
When Gabriel and Elijah walk in. Elijah's sudden reappearance I find extremely suspect.
Yep.
Like, he was dragged off into the woods
Yeah, like how did this even happen? And I
His
think
mask is missing. I don't
we're
know.
supposed to be suspicious of it. So there is that as well. And again, like I don't know, like again the timing of all of this, even with these people showing up, they still don't really have a chance of anything with this force that we've
No.
seen. We're talking about
She lists the
military
number of people who are missing or dead, and it's just like, yeah, that's more than half of who you set out with.
right.
And Gabriel's stabbed in the leg and in the neck, and is basically useless. He has to be carried by Elijah. Like, there's no mission.
No,
And this
there's
is what's
not.
kind of silly about Maggie's insistence that no, the mission isn't over yet. I'm like, dude, there's no way you're gonna continue with
Well,
any
and it's
success.
even, even with some of the fighter, and especially with the fighters you've lost, you're talking about losing some of the people that were most able to help you, and they are no competition for this group of specially trained like operatives, basically. So
Yeah,
I don't
and they don't
know.
even know how trained the Reapers are. They just know that the Reapers are scary. They haven't actually like they don't have any intel on it. We do now as an audience. The show is kind of like letting us sit on that, and I don't know,
Maybe.
like there's like a different dynamic all of a sudden on the show about the Reapers. It feels like.
Right. I mean, they may not know all, but they know enough that they're organized, highly weaponized. They are they're organized in a way. This is what they do. They know that they're gonna, um, even with the limited information that our group has, they know that I would imagine even Maggie would have to admit they have no chance against them in whatever way they are now. And so, I mean, it might kill her to deal with it, but I think that they've got like basically some decisions to make, and I don't think it would be to stay and try to like deal with them. Um, and then we've also got the whole issue with Daryl, which is like you know I mean everything with him and with this group, they're like kind of like they're asking him to do things to basically I think ensure that he's actually part of the group. But again, they've trusted him pretty quickly. I don't know that if they did have any suspicion that he knew this other person that they captured with him, would they? I mean, I guess it's a test to see if he would actually elicit the information. But it also feels, I don't know, it just feels very strange to me that they would immediately, and they don't. I mean, I guess they don't, other than Leah, trust him. But just even sending him on a mission.
I don't think even she trusts him. I mean, maybe she does, but I don't believe anything I'm seeing or hearing with the Reapers either. Like, especially with Pope, they're
Yeah,
all too leery, you know?
it just feels very mustache twirly in a way that I don't know. Like, as we've said before, the whole decision to throw the other dude on the fire, it doesn't seem as if he would. Like these people are all specially trained. I don't know that they would stay under the thrall of this person. And
Everything, yeah. I mean, we're definitely on the inside episode at this point. We've crossed over. So if you're following along at home, we're in episode 6 now, but it does kind of just flow because this storyline of Maggie, Negan, Gabriel, and Elijah in that house kind of just continues in this next episode. The thing that happens here that's kind of mind-boggling is that Daryl, not I mean, I guess he doesn't really have a choice. He could try to fight his way out of the Reaper's base, but he would probably not make it. And he opts to cut Frost's finger off. And, I don't know. His first move was like the sleeper hold, which I was like, that's your opening torture move, Daryl? That's not exactly a strong opener. And Carver is like watching his every move. So is Pope. So is Leah. He doesn't have a lot of options, but I thought it was kind of funny. Oh, it was funny that was his opening torture move, but then he goes and cuts the dude's finger off and the dude does not survive. And I have to wonder if Daryl's going to be okay with that in the long run. Maybe he will. He didn't know Frost very well.
Well, nobody did, so he's very much kind of a red shirtish.
He was a red shirt, but he was a trained red shirt of Maggie's elite team of all dead people that she.
Right. Well, and also in this whole thing, it's like cutting the finger off is pretty drastic, and he's kind of like looking at him like, "Oh, this is okay, man." Like there's just like these really weird moments, and I think
they were having a lot of nonverbal communication in that scene that I don't know that any of it was actually very clear to either of them because Frost ends up dead.
Right. And ultimately Frost gives up info. I guess with the hope that Maggie and her group is savvy enough to avoid this team. But and then they send out that again, it doesn't seem believable to me that they would send Daryl out into the wild because they still don't trust him, and the idea that he could maybe escape or warn or do something seems a little
And he
strange.
the things that he does do, like hiding the trapdoor and moving those not power lines, but those telecom lines.
Yep.
Those are exactly the sorts of things that he has the ability to do when he's on this mission. And he just kind of like creates drama with Carver, and Leah is, you know, like has had enough of it too. Like he is a liability on this mission, and I don't see the value in his going along because he's not part of their team. What was the
Right. And
point?
I don't think that they would have. I mean, again, if they're sort of testing him and whatever, yeah, I guess in some ways you can kind of see how he acts, but he's a liability in a big way, in a way that could get more of them killed. They don't have that many people. So that's like sort of seems very strange to me that they wouldn't kind of limit his contact, especially if they have suspicions about him. But in any case, that's what they do. And, you know, we've got Maggie and them listening to the stuff. So I think that they understand that Daryl is not with this group, or hopefully they do. I mean, Negan knows enough about Daryl to understand that torture doesn't really work with him, and that he's not. I don't know. I feel like hopefully, and Maggie's got enough of a relationship with Daryl, but who knows? They may think he's actually with this group. But I think they under.
Nah. I
I think
mean, they're
they
in the basement. They can hear everything he's saying.
right.
Um, I think based on that, he's in the clear with them for sure.
Yeah, but in any case, like, but there's so again, there's things that don't make sense, and you know, I guess they sent them out to look for runners, so maybe that's how they got away. But this is a pretty now group of people, some injured, who are moving probably kind of slowly. You've got a group of people that can supposedly track anybody.
Yep.
I just don't know that they would have managed to escape, but they do. And then the whole sort of search reconnaissance of the house, they verified that Frost was telling the truth, but there's a lot of they have a lot of the tension between Daryl and Leah and Carver. But I think that the one piece that was successful in this little sort of interaction is that both Leah and Carver own up to having they're afraid of Pope. They think he's crazy.
And Leah owns up to not being in on the shed being set on fire,
Right,
which
which I was
I had
surprised.
said she was in on last week because it seemed like she
It
was. She
did seem
definitely
like she was. So,
recovered
um,
quickly.
but I thought that that was interesting that they now, you know, maybe not total alliance, but enough that they are questioning the leader or leadership of Pope. So there's that. And then, you know, but then of course they leave the big cliffhanger with, you know, the fact that Frost has been tortured more by Pope, and Pope is whispering with Carver and keeps looking at Daryl like, hey, we're not talking about you. So, well, I'm sure we'll see more about that in the future. And then on the other half of this episode, very much the Nicotero part of this, we see a lot of Connie and Virgil. This is very much a sort of super horror genre idea where they're being like herded.
This is the people under the
Yep.
stairs. Some of this? These are a group of people I think who have been called the ferals by the showrunners
Yep.
and the fans, and they're humans. I don't know if they were in the comics. I think they probably were. Um,
Probably. I don't know. I didn't read far enough in,
this
unfortunately.
feels like also a subset of Max Brooks's take, where people
Yep.
like tried to take on the attributes of zombies. So these are humans who have well, it's kind of funny how much they've devolved. They've taken the trash people's
Yeah.
weird stuff and then just doubled down on that, where they
They've
only
doubled
walk on
down on
all
it, but
fours.
if they're this crazy and feral, I mean, I just doubt their organizational skill set to herd Connie and Virgil for as long as they've been out in the world,
Mm-hmm.
to herd them towards this house. I also think that they're so loud and weird, like the fact that they think that they're alone in this house for as long as they do. I mean, none of these feral people seem to have any control over anything.
I mean,
Um,
at the end, they also prove how stupid they are. Like they try to fight a bunch of zombies and they lose.
Right. And they're not like it just doesn't seem again, there's a lot of things kind of like pushing my buttons in terms of the realities in these two episodes, and this is the opposite of what's going on in the Commonwealth, but I just again Virgil and Connie have survived this apocalypse. Connie is freaking deaf. I like so I just don't like. Obviously, she can't hear the people, but she
Well,
could.
those are the scariest scenes in this episode, though, is when it's from Connie's perspective. And they've done this before when she was in the cornfield with the
Yep.
baby. But this one, it's like you get 2 or 3 of these scenes where all the sound is gone and it's just her, which you're not really looking, it's not her POV, but it's a lot of like close-ups of her face, and you're
Yep.
just waiting for the thing to jump out. And it,
Well, and I will, my criticisms aside from the feral storyline, I thought that the filming of this was excellent. It was really stressful. It was exactly like it was very Nicotero.
Mhm.
Um, in that you've got these little like close shots, you've got like the way that there's almost like a secret second part of this house, which is super crazy. You've got the whole the setup where Connie, like gets to, she kind of sees a glimpse of one of these things, and Virgil's like, oh, you haven't slept at all. Again, I think it's really sort of not realistic that this group of crazy ass people would be quiet enough, because even just them sort of roaming around in this second house or this hidden piece of the house, Connie would feel that. You would feel the vibrations, I think, because they're like, and I will say, like, the movement of the actors who are playing the ferals is super creepy and strange, and they've
Oh
got
yeah.
this like this crazy contortionist thing going on, which is always creepy. But you know, and it's also a little like, how many are there? Because at first it seemed like there wasn't that many, and then suddenly it's like this gang of them.
Yeah.
Um, so
It's also funny in this episode that Virgil is the sane one. I
yeah,
mean, we know that Connie is also, she is seeing what she's seeing. She's not hallucinating, but Virgil just being like, "Oh, I think you're just tired." And this was the insane guy who was like hooked on hallucinogenics when
yep,
he back when he met Michonne. So that's kind of funny.
yeah,
It's a scary ass episode, and I was like, Connie, don't go in the ducts. These guys seem like they're very comfortable in ducts. It's a
yep,
little funny that she like beats them at their own game by getting into the wall, and they
yep,
don't think to go inside the wall to chase her.
right.
Like they live in the walls.
They live in the walls, but there's like and then there's also the whole, she can't really talk, or you can't really hear her, but even her banging the wall, and Virgil, like, the whole knife through the wall, and when he finally realizes it's her, that's like a pretty great scene, like where she's like, damn it, you're putting the knife through. um and then
That's a pretty
there's,
cool knife he has. Also, that's a K-bar, I'm
yep,
pretty sure, which is a Marine Corps knife. I don't know how. Well, I guess he lived on an army base in
yep.
theory, but good job, Virgil. You got yourself a cool knife.
But even, the speech with her where he basically says, look, I really messed up, so if it means that I have to sacrifice myself for you to get out of here, I'm going to do that, because Michonne brought me back, and I've got to honor that, and not, um, I also think that Connie using the walker guts, I wasn't sure quite what was going to happen here, but that was, we've now seen, they put this away for a while, this skill set, and for a while, we didn't see this, but we've seen now Daryl use it and now Connie use it, and it's just sort of a known thing. But the whole scene in the house I thought was really well done, despite my skepticism about the cannibal people.
Yeah.
But
It was great until I feel like the way that I would have rather that Carol and Kelly came in and saved them
I
than
agree.
the ferals somehow decided to get into a slap fight with a bunch of walkers.
Yeah, that
It
seemed a little
was
lame.
it's like, dude, you guys, you survived this long. This is again, look, anytime people are getting killed by walkers where the situation is not like very one-sided, it feels silly. And the ferals might have lost 1 or 2 when Connie unexpectedly opened the door, but they shouldn't have all been eaten in that scene, in my
Well, and
opinion.
especially if you're talking about a group of people who have the organizational wherewithal to herd a couple of
Mhm.
people, again, it just doesn't seem believable to me. And that there are so few survivors, that they would have this kind of ability and time and energy to be able to do this.
Oh God, yeah.
My thought is
How
that they
could
would
they
have starved.
possibly have enough to eat? Right.
No, they would have starved long ago. So that seemed crazy to me. We do have the happy reunion scene between Connie and Kelly, which I will admit, I had a moment where I thought one of them was going to die, like get taken out by a walker or feral or something like that. That doesn't happen. But I also, again, it's sort of like they just found out Connie was alive and somehow managed to track her from nowhere to nowhere within like an episode, which I thought was kind of crazy. I do like that Kelly eventually reunites with Carol and Rosita and Magna, and that as a group they go and find her.
Hmm.
But it seems sort of ridiculous that Kelly would be able to track anybody down this easily. And I don't know. What was your feeling about that?
Yeah, it was a little too easy. And I'm also curious, is Virgil dead? He gets stabbed like 4 times with a table leg.
Even
Hmm.
if he's not like immediately dead, infection wise, this is probably not does not bode well. Um, so we'll have to see. Maybe it missed his kidneys, maybe it missed his vital organs, but that was a pretty rough scene where he's getting stabbed.
I think Virgil is a really odd choice of character to bring back for just this like reunion with Connie, then only just to kill him off. Like,
Yeah,
is it,
it doesn't.
you know?
But I will say that those stabs seem pretty intense. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I have a feeling miraculously he will survive because agreed. I just don't think it makes sense to just have him back for one episode. And he's so weird. You would think that there's going to be some additional strange group dynamics. And he has news of Michonne and some other things. So let's see what happens.
I guess, yeah, it would be great for him to be able to tell Judith that he saw her
Michonne.
mom.
Yep.
But like she talked to Judith on the radio. I mean, he doesn't know anything that Michonne wasn't able to relay, I feel like, already.
Right. But even just the fact that somebody saw her, I think Judith would take heart in that.
Maybe.
So we'll have to see what happens. I definitely liked a couple of things. I just don't know where they're going with it. So I will say, at least for on the inside, as well done as the inside of the house thing was, I just thought that the pacing for both of these, there were moments where it felt very draggy. Less so with on the inside, to the out of the ashes. But we'll have to see how they progress it. Definitely enjoyed the artistry though of this kind of horror house. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. It was an enjoy. It was probably my more preferred episode from the last one,
Yeah, agreed.
mostly because it didn't have 5 storylines that we were bouncing back and forth between, but it did have 3. Like, I think the show is trying to get everybody on screen to tell all these stories that it has, but it's a little disconcerting.
I think it's disconcerting. I also feel like some of this I could be wrong, but some of the COVID things had to change how they told certain stories, and now I feel like they are trying to cram a lot in. But this is also like they're trying to cram a lot in for a variety of reasons, and I think they have to at some point bring different groups together and whatever. But they do have to give you some kind of background and context. So I think that's it's still there's still a lot of like setting the table to some extent. I feel
Mhm.
setups for maybe later things that happen in the rest of the season. But obviously, at some point, there'll be conflict between Maggie, Negan, and the Reapers, and maybe even the Reapers in Alexandria. So we have that. And then we've got, just definitely like the Commonwealth, and obviously our team of heroes was found out about, because they were trying to illicitly use the radio. But hopefully it will be it did feel a little disjointed. I got to agree with you on that. So we'll have to hopefully see what what becomes of it, and hopefully it will be a little less frenetic.
Yeah.
But I also understand that this is a pretty massive cast, and
It's a
they are
massive cast and a massive season. I mean,
right.
we have 2 more episodes before the first break.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what's coming, like another 8 episodes and then another break and then another 8 episodes potentially, because this season is something like, is it 24
Yeah, I think
episodes
so.
long? So I think they might be doing it in thirds. Yeah, they've gotten a fair amount done in these 8 or in these 6 so far. And I hope that they kind of tie up the Reaper storyline before the season break, would be my hope.
I hope so. And I mean, one of the things, despite the kind of thing that they did with the Whisperer, but I do like that they were kind of showing, well, what happens when the big bad is no longer the big bad? Like, what
Yeah.
happens to the vestiges of that group? And we've seen a little bit of that. I mean, obviously Alden, and Negan and things like that, and that things kind of evolve. So I think I kind of like your idea that maybe they use the Whisperers to their they haven't used enough of that skill set, which is a pretty valid skill set, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we've done that storyline too, where they tried to work with the saviors, but then it all went bad.
I know, but
Um,
I mean, I just kind of feel like, especially with the things that are happening with Alexandria and trying to keep the wall up and trying to keep it safe. I mean, Lydia has this skill set.
yeah,
Like it just feels like they would be able to kind of lead the walkers away if they used it. So that would be kind of a cool thing to see. So we'll have to see how all that pans out. Um,
true.
I think that's all I have. Anything else to add?
No, ma'am. I think that's about all I've got. And well, I would entreat those who listened and enjoyed the episode or didn't. Let us know what you think. Reach out to us on Reanimated PCast on Twitter, Reanimated Podcast at gmail.com on the Gmails. And you can always get a look at our show notes and the trailers and those kinds of things that we've been talking about on reanimatedpodcast.com.
Yep, and I would love to hear what people thought of these two episodes. So send us your input. And until next time, ciao, and thanks for listening.
Thanks. Toodles.